Thank you, Jamie. I'm trying to figure out where is the AI talent this morning, but anyway, that's a whole separate issue. I hope you guys had a good conference yesterday and went through a lot of different sessions. To me, this topic has a lot of resonance because we're going to talk about why there is an urgency to make sure AI talent is spread across regions, industries, communities. Because democratizing AI talent is about making sure innovation spreads everywhere so that the United States can lead responsibly in the global AI race. I come to this topic on a personal basis. My son recently graduated with a degree in AI. So I asked him basically where was he and his friends going to be looking for jobs. And without batting an eyelid, he said that same 3-4 companies that are the big global giants in the tech world, and they're great companies. Some of you might be working for them. There's nothing wrong with that. But it really, for me, that was a moment that really struck me, that if all the AI talent ends up in a few companies in a few zip codes, then what is it that we are creating? What happens to the diversity of thought? What happens to the diversity of talent? If AI is going to be the next generation important tool or technology that's going to transform how we treat diseases, how we educate our children, how we move goods across the board, then are we sure we want to have this future being built in 2 zip codes with a narrow set of people focused on a narrow set of problems? So that's where I thought it's something at least important to talk about. This is a conference of AI people. My personal background is in AI. By the way, my son did take a job in one of those companies, but that's a whole separate issue. But the question really for us is, at least as a country, is making sure as we are heading into this technology, we know what we are doing. So I thought I'll raise this issue to all of you who are amazing practitioners, entrepreneurs, policy leaders, etc. This is part of the AI Policy Summit. It's, to me, an important topic. So I'm going to basically lay out to you certain facts, some of them probably obvious to you, but from a personal standpoint, it became a little more obvious, as I said, listening to my son. And why does it really matter? Because, hey, social media is being concentrated, cloud has been concentrated. Why does it really matter? And then, is there something that you, us can do about it or should do about it? So I'll just walk you through a few things. Just to give you some perspective, 40% of the top AI researchers in this country are at 4 basic universities. And you would say, hey, they're great universities, and they are fantastic universities. But that also talks about what's happening in terms of AI talent in other places. And that's a scary thought from that perspective, in terms because talent is going to keep going into those kind of educational institutions. And then, if you think about it, 77% of AI jobs are clustered in 10 metro cities. There are 300 cities in this country that have the balance of those jobs. And again, you would say, again, that's a technical problem. But if you were here yesterday with some of the sessions we had, AI is a very different technology. It's a general purpose technology. And as I said, it's going to impact everything that we do. And if that is the case, and then finally, think about the amount of money that is getting invested in AI just in the first half of the year. And 50% of it was basically spent in Silicon Valley. This is not to take any shots at Silicon Valley. If some of you are from Silicon Valley, power to you. I support your free kombuchas, nap pods, etc. I just want to make sure the rest of the country also gets its share. So that's just kind of a little bit of a ground framing of the situation that we are in. So why does it matter? And I kind of lay out that it's basically it leads to concentration of talent. From a competitiveness also, it does impact our competitiveness. And then there's an industry and a geographical gap that happens because of this. So if you really look, and I don't know if you're in the world of AI, I'm sure everybody kind of knows what's happening in terms of salaries and packages that are being handed out to the top tier of AI researchers. And I'm all for folks getting them. I hope my son one day gets one of those packages too. But it does have implications when you give $14 billion to acquire a company, or you pay hundreds of millions of dollars. What happens to mid-tier researchers across companies in different regions? And I think that's really the hyper-concentration and elite class of AI that is getting generated. Now, if you're in that elite class, you say, hey, what's the big deal? You look at the NBA, there's always best players. In the NFL, we've had the best players, etc. But as I said, this technology is going to be working on curing diseases for you, educating your children in many, many other aspects. So we need to make sure that what we are getting into. So again, my perspective is that as a country, we need to be leading by inclusion, not by exclusion. And why is that important? If a lot of you are building AI systems, if there is not a diversity of thought from a regional standpoint, from a people standpoint, from an industry standpoint, you're really not going to have strong AI systems that can solve the kinds of problems that we are trying to solve, whether it is in medicine, whether it is in manufacturing, whether it is in retail, etc. It is going to have a very, very narrow focused area. So just think about what's happening across industries. And this is something I work a lot on is, people always talk about the tech industry, and most of you, I would presume a lot of you work in the tech sector. But there is something beyond the tech sector. Look at where the AI adoption rate is happening in things like manufacturing, happening in retail, healthcare, financial services. Look at the GVAs of some of these industries that are projected by 2035. But how do you think these industries are going to achieve the things that they need to achieve? Manufacturing with predictive maintenance, supply chain, retail for targeted marketing. And then when you look at healthcare, diagnostics, delivery of healthcare, finance, for fraud detection, algorithmic buying, etc. I mean, those are important things that happen. But each of these industries is suffering from an absolute talent crunch, because if you are coming out of school, or if you are an AI top-tier person, you probably are not ending up in some of these industries. So if you see, what is happening is these industries are really struggling to get the talent that they need. And that is a very, very important issue, because when these industries struggle, we're going to lack the innovation that is needed for these industries from that standpoint. So we have an industry gap, and then there is a geographical gap that exists. Think about it, 77% of AI, when I said AI in metro jobs, what's happening in rural or small towns? What happens to small companies in those areas? What happens to healthcare systems in rural areas? They need to implement AI to transcribe what physicians are doing from a diagnostic standpoint, etc. But when you look at this map, you see all the greens, they're generally heavily towards the coastal areas. And talent happens to be everywhere, but in many cases, opportunity is not for them. So what do you think we can do? I mean, this is some things that, as I said, I've been thinking about is we really need to rebuild the talent pipeline that we have in this country. And we need to have some policy partnerships, whether at the federal and the state level. And then we have to highlight champions, unsung champions. And then also we need to engage hyperscalers who are investing in data centers around our country. So in terms of building or rebuilding the talent pipeline, we really need to focus on different entry points for education, whether it's community colleges. A lot of people in our country go into two-year community colleges, and we need to make sure there is strong engagement. NVIDIA has set up a partnership in California with community colleges to train people in AI. And then vocational programs and online courses too, so that it can be spread. Now, obviously, we see Coursera and some of these other things that are doing nano degrees and things of that nature. But also, we need to make sure that we are upskilling the workforce. It's great to get talent in, but what about the people who are existing in those companies in that part of the country? Walmart is doing a reskilling of its employees, and some of these other employers have taken it on to reskill the employees because that is going to be an important aspect of what we do. So that rebuilding our talent pipeline is very critical. And then what can we do at a policy level? And this is where federal and state both come into the play. The federal government with the Trump administration recently announced the AI Action Plan. We're going to have a session later this afternoon. If you have the time, come. We have some great speakers on that. But a big part of that is in terms of education and creating a talent pipeline across the country. And the other thing is NIRE. And what is NIRE? It's the National AI Research Facility, which gives AI compute as well as data to academic institutions and small companies around the country, because everybody can't afford a GPU or people don't have access to data sets. So this gives you a free access to that. States have gotten into the act too. A lot of states now are working. Wisconsin is working towards how can we build an AI hub. They work with Microsoft to train 100,000 people in Wisconsin towards that. So I think states have a big role towards that. And then finally, there is the ORISE AI Challenge, which is helping even at K-12. We can start early on at K-12 too. So when you look at what the godmother of AI, Fifi Lee, she has AI for All program, which really gets into K-12 education early on across the board. This is something that we are doing. I run a nonprofit called CAIO Connect, which means the Chief AI Officers Connect. And our focus really, why do we do this, is there are organizations besides the 3-4 big tech companies or FANG or whatever the acronym is right now that are doing incredible work, whether it is in manufacturing, whether it is in retail, whether it's in industrial, platforms. We basically bring them over and tell our audience and tell the people what innovative stuff are you guys doing within your companies, and why should people come in and work for you? So when you look at some of the things that companies, and these are just a few, but some of them are here, by the way. Johnson Controls, industrial control company. Schneider Electric, huge, again, in terms of batteries and electric stuff. Grainger, office supplies, their chief AI officer is here. Michelin Tires, Emerson Electric, and many others. And why do we do that? Because I don't want the next kids coming out of school to say, hey, these are the only companies that are doing cool AI things. Because when you listen to these folks, they are implementing AI for incredible stuff. For temperature control in this facility, Johnson Controls and companies like that are using AI to do that stuff. And then again, Granger from Office Supply to track all the different kinds of things that they have within them. So there's some amazing creative things that are happening, and we need to highlight and showcase these kinds of companies. And then again, $200 billion is going to be spent by these hyperscalers around the country in data centers. They need these data centers because AI data centers are critical. Some of the companies and some of the states need to say, hey, if you want to invest, and they need these investments, you need to commit to training locally out here in AI and AI technologies. And I think that's very, very important for states to be doing. So what can we do together? Well, I told you what we are doing. I would say investing in education. Community colleges, to me, are very, very important. Supporting public-private partnerships, I think, are critical. The other thing, I think, is supporting open source. Open source is really critical. If people say, hey, AI is the new electricity, well, open source, make sure the lights are on for everybody, not just for a select few. So I would say support open source because it gives access to everybody. And then spotlighting companies that are not part of this genre. There are so many other companies that are doing some creative things. Highlight them. And then promote remote and distributed work. I know right now it's kind of not in vogue. After COVID, we went remote, then now we are back in there. But there are people in rural areas, in other parts of the country that have the talents that don't want to move, can't move. And we don't tap into those skills. AI work can be done everywhere. So I would say is, let's give that an opportunity too. So finally, I would say is, I'll come back to my son's story is, imagine when he was graduating out, he and his friends said that, instead of working for these 3-4 great companies, we want to work for a manufacturing company in Michigan, or we want to work for an energy company in Texas, or we want to work for a healthcare company in Ohio. Think about the benefits that we as a nation would get, because AI talent really should be everywhere, in every city, every classroom, and every community. I think if that happens, only if that happens, we as a country are going to really benefit, and as a community, because this has a social impact too. What we don't want to do is create an AI divide, just like we call it a digital divide. This has even a bigger consequences in doing that. So I hope you folks will do your part. We are doing our part in there. So thank you so much for coming and listening to Democratizing AI Talent. And all of you have great talent. And I hope that we get a chance to engage with you. Thank you so much.